to connect.
Welcome to another exciting panel discussion for India Tourism March 21 virtual. Thank you for everyone all over the world who are joining in for this very, very exciting session. As you have been noticing earlier, each session addresses a particular vertical of Indian tourism, travel and hospitality, which intends to bring out the best voices in the industry. And right now, we have a very exciting session of how India needs to reposition itself, leveraging aviation. And for that, we have Jyoti Mayal, who is the president of Travel Agent Association of India and also the vice chairperson of FAITH. Wish you all a very lovely session. Jyoti, all yours. Thank you. Namaste once again.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you so much. Namaskar and good afternoon to all viewers, members of TAI, associations, travel, tourism and hospitality industry, buyers and sellers globally and in India who have logged in or watching us live on various platforms. Welcome to ITM 2021 and the Leadership Conclave. I'm Jyoti Mayal, President of TAI and Vice Chairperson of FAITH. Today is a day where I believe we are moving from the past to the present to build our tomorrow, because in our present lies our past and surely the tomorrow too. India will no doubtedly be the emerging economy post-COVID-19. I believe we, with our huge foresight, have overcome the deadly virus, and the dissemination of the vaccine will mark a new emerging India. India is sitting on the verge of a golden opportunity. Over 70 years post-independence, India got to a global market share of 1% in foreign travel arrivals. Countries smaller than India in size and much lesser tourism offerings went to double and triple the share of India. But COVID, with all its gloom and doom, has created an opportunity for Indian tourism. Pre-COVID, India had more than 17 million foreign travelers arrivals into India, including both foreign tourists and those visiting their friends and relatives. At the same time, domestically, more than 2.3 billion domestic tourism visits took place in India. Apart from the twin goals, increasing these inbound arrivals and domestic tourism, India is very well positioned to be a tourism hub between the Western and the Eastern Hemisphere. In addition to its geographic advantage and linkages, India is one of the 17th most biodiverse countries with a history going back more than 5,000 years. This natural and cultural heritage must be leveraged in addition to our geographic advantages, our democratic institutions, and our service-friendly attitude, which has put us in a leadership position to create an aviation hub driven by tourism. This implies rapidly opening up of tourist visas, enhancing multi-line air connectivity, creating tourism hotspots, enhancing our tax competitiveness, skilling, and creating tourism infrastructure. But to make this concept a reality, all stakeholders have to work together. Value and respect has to be created and shared among government and private infrastructure and service providers, principals and travel intermediaries, policy and pragmatism. Easier said than done, but it must be done nevertheless. I would like to invite a spokesperson who's better than the best, our Honorable Minister of Civil Aviation, Government of India, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, to pave the path of our discussion as the keynote speaker to this leadership forum. Mr. Puri needs no introduction. He is a person of and for the industry, always ready to hear us, and we've been regularly interacting with him as TAI, and our inputs in opening of flights, RT-PCR testing, domestic connectivity, and have all been considered and some of them adopted. TAI, FAITH, and ITM would like to invite Hardeep Singh Puriji to share his vision, which is also the vital vision of our Honorable Prime Minister to achieve India, the new age tourism and aviation hub of Asia.
Captains from the tourism and aviation industries, esteemed speakers, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would at the outset like to thank the Travel Agents Association of India and its president, Jyoti Mayalji in particular, for inviting me to address the Virtual Tourism Leadership Conclave of the India Tourism Mart 2021 being organized by the Federation of Association in Indian Tourism and Hospitality, FAITH, in collaboration with the Ministry of Tourism. The theme of the discussion, India, the new age tourism and aviation hub, is very apt in this COVID period. Post-COVID, it will be a new India. The world is looking at India from various different aspects, including the production and supply of vaccines. Despite the doomsday predictions of some agencies and organizations, India has handled this situation relatively far better than most other countries, and we are now hopeful the countries around the world on the vaccination front will see the developments that we have been able to register. We have now transported around 6.2 crore doses, 3.3 crore domestically, and 2.75 crores internationally. On the economic front, several opposition parties pointed to the negative growth of around 23.9% in the first quarter, which is April, May, and June of 2020. But they forget that that was a period of complete lockdown. Now, even the International Monetary Fund is saying that India will grow at 11.5%. Coming to aviation, we have a calibrated opening post-lockdown. Since 25th May 2020, the allowed capacity has been progressively increased from 33% to 45% to 60%, to now 70% and to 80%. This has been done keeping the interest of passengers and airlines in mind. We had a daily traffic of 3.11 lakhs on Sunday, 14th February, which is around 77% of the pre-COVID level. In addition of these domestic operation, we are having international flights under the Vande Bharat mission and air bubble arrangements. We now have air bubble arrangements with 26 countries, the latest being Russia and Seychelles that have been added to the list. We have till now carried more than 55 lakh passengers, both outbound and inbound, since 7 May 20, when the VBM started. I can go on and on citing our activities like Lifeline Udan, Krishi Udan, FTOs, cargo, and others. Suffice it to say that pre-COVID, we were having flights from 107 Airports Authority of India airports, and now we are having flights from 99 Airport Authority of India airports. So our endeavor to return towards normalcy has been successful. Civil aviation is one of the critical drivers of economic growth and is presently a very important indicator of economic recovery. It is almost umbilically intertwined with the tourism sector. Presently, we are seeing a marked increase in domestic travel and very much for tourism purposes. Anecdotally, I would like to say that many people are visiting tourism spots, the old ones, new ones around the country, from Srinagar to Goa. The Honorable Prime Minister himself has urged people to visit 15 domestic tourist destinations in India by 2022. I think completely free international tourist movement may take some time, depending on the behavior of the virus. The restrictions of travel around the world range from quarantine to vaccine passports. Even in this scenario, we were receiving requests from people for allowing international charters to Goa. We could have allowed these, but then tourist visas are not being issued as of now. I have some figures before me which tell us that India ranked 10th in a survey of 185 countries in terms of contribution of travel and tourism to the GDP. It was 6.8% for India in 2019. Domestic tourist visits were 2.3 billion in 2019 and international arrivals were 10.9 million. We have always tried to connect various tourist locations. Our Udan scheme connects unserved and underserved airports across the country. 311 routes have been operationalized so far, and till now 55 lakh people have flown on these Udan flights. We are connecting the hinterland where the next round of growth will come from through Udan. These include tourism RCS routes as well. 2 months ago, I was in Agra for the foundation's laying ceremony of Agra Metro. We had a lot of requests for connecting Agra and Goa, two of the most popular tourist destinations in the country. Air India was quick to start flights on the Agra-Goa route. The Honorable Prime Minister launched the first seaplane service in India from the Statue of Unity at Kevadia and the Sabarmati riverfront on 31st October 2020. We are developing Kushinagar as an international airport, which will be operational shortly. thereby providing improved connectivity on the Buddhist circuit. Special efforts are on to connect northeastern states and islands. We are building 100 new airports and connecting 1,000 new routes under UDAN. New greenfield airports are coming up at Jewar, Navi Mumbai, Goa, among other places. So friends, India is a land of infinite opportunities with 7% penetration in terms of civil aviation market and double-digit growth rates. We have just started our journey on civil aviation front and the scope is enormous. The tourism and aviation sectors complement each other and have a symbiotic relationship. We have geographical diversity, natural and cultural heritage, and demographic dividend, which makes us a most suitable destination to be positioned as a tourism and aviation hub. Safe, secure, and sustainable air links make our world a better place. I am sure the travel and tourism industry will soon bounce back to its full potential. The government and industry share the responsibility to work together to achieve this objective. Together, we all should come up with innovative ideas that, when put into practice, will directly benefit the country. Thank you. Jai Hind.
So now let's move to our panel discussion with the most prominent thought leaders of both tourism and aviation. The industry, which certainly is the strength for all countries, globally for their growth in economy, GDP, and increases in the spend of capital expenditure. An industry which is the highest employer, and as we move to a healthier phase post-COVID-19, is what will culminate, I believe, into making India the largest economy. Our topic today is very interesting. To reiterate, India, the new tourism and aviation hub of Asia, something which we are surely capable of driving and achieving, but how? That is what we are here to deliberate. And for the same, I'd like to introduce our thought leaders who represent the industry for tourism and aviation as private players, policymakers, and regulators of the industry. I'll go alphabetically. Ajay Singh is the principal shareholder and chairman and managing director of SpiceJet. Besides various laurels to his name, he has the acumen to turn around loss-making businesses. Ajay became the first Indian to chair the prestigious Aviation, Travel and Tourism Governors Meeting at the World Economic Forum Davos, and in 2019 was nominated to the Board of Governors of International Air Transport Association. Alexandre de Juniac, the Director General and CEO, International Air Transport Association, IATA. He is the 7th person to lead IATA when he took on the role of Director General and CEO on 1st September 2016. Alexandre has 3 decades of experience in both the private and public sectors, which includes senior positions in the airline, aerospace industries, defense security, transportation, and the French government. Today, he joins us from Geneva. George Etiel, Senior Director, South Asia for Lufthansa Group Airlines. George was appointed Senior Director, Sales South Asia, effective February 2019. Based in New Delhi, he is responsible for overseeing all commercial activities for Lufthansa Group Airlines, business in India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Maldives, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka. He brings in a unique blend of understanding of the business and cultural landscape of India and Germany. Pradeep Singh Kharola is an IAS 1985 batch Karnataka cadre. He has won various crowns. I mean, whatever I say would be less. And his tenure as director in MOT, where he helped in formulating policies for tourism administration and development. Chairman and Managing Director, Air India, and currently Secretary, Ministry of Civil Aviation, where I've seen Pradeep ji work diligently, could be policy making, connecting with the industry, and supporting us to survive and revive. Rono Joy Datta, whole-time Director and Chief Executive Officer of Indigo Airlines. Rono is an aviation expert. I've known him since years too. Has held broad spectrum of leadership positions in planning, maintenance, finance, and information technology. He was an advisor to Air Canada, US Airways during their restructuring, and also served on the boards of United Airlines, US Airways, and also the president of Air Sahara for 2 years, thus bringing in the flavor of domestic and international. Suman Villa, Director, Technical Cooperation and Silk Road, United Nations World Tourism Organization, the UNWTO, and is joining us from Madrid today. A 1996 batch IAS officer from Kerala cadre, is certainly a doer and achiever. Tourism has always been his forte, and he's very passionate about the same. Suman has worked very closely in promoting responsible tourism in his state, Kerala, and he's done much, much more in the center. He fought and achieved GST reduction, and most importantly, was a catalyst for opening of e-visa, which is a great accomplishment for the country and has enabled growth of numbers in inbound tourism and travel. Wow, what a galaxy. And I'm very excited to hear from all of you. So to start the ball rolling, I think I'll be asking, just to set the flow, two common questions with a revert time of 3 minutes from each of you. And then we'll go on to two specific questions with 2 minutes each, and ending with the last fun word, like Rona Joy started our talk with, some jokes maybe, and a 1 minute each, so that we can then take some questions from the industry members. Please do bear with me if the time just extends by a few minutes. For the viewers, I request anyone who would like to ask any questions to please put it on the chat box with the name of the speaker to be addressed to, and hopefully, if time permits, we will be able to take them all. Okay, so saying that, I'm going to start the ball rolling and say, how can India become the new hub? And what is needed to not drive, actually skyrocket it? And have we missed the opportunity? Or can COVID-19 be the catalyst of opportunity from the crisis, especially as all countries will start from ground zero? So I'm going to put that question first. I can see on my left side, I see Alexandre right there. So maybe I could start with him and take his international point of view.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation. And we are pretty honored to be there and to contribute. So your question is how India can become the hub of Asia. Well, first of all, we have to get rid of a small problem, which is COVID-19. Well, that's a general problem for everyone. It's a catastrophic situation for our industry. Perhaps slightly less in India because your domestic market has been probably more robust than many markets all over the world. So even if the situation is difficult, India has probably done better for the domestic market. The international market is still pretty low. That's general trend everywhere. You know that we have lost almost more than 83% of the international traffic. So it's a complete disaster for international passengers. India has tried to recover by experimenting some measures for international traffic, putting in place bubbles that are, seen from us, I'm sorry to say, good idea, but should be temporary. Because when you implement bubbles, you create an exceptional situation. You stop the current air service agreement between the two countries, India and the other country with which you put a bubble. So it's good to restart as an experiment, as an initial booster, but then we should come back. We are advocating in favor of coming back to a normal system. Secondly, as a general point, we have always advocated, in India in favor of two things. First of all, reducing costs, because India is a pretty costly market for aviation. So, and the Indian government knows that, is our permanent, advocacy for India. So, the more you reduce costs, the more you will boost air traffic and help, our industry. And secondly, we say to India, but it's not the only government to which we advocate that, do not over-regulate. Sometimes we have you can regulate some exceptional situation. You can regulate because you have the COVID, but the tendency to over-regulate our industry is always a limitation to its development. So we advocate in favor of deregulation, of less regulation, and reduce cost. And I think that the two conditions for India to become a hub. The third one is to develop infrastructure. The Indian government has done a great job for airport air traffic control, and that's a good thing. It must be very dynamically pushed. Without the appropriate infrastructure, competitive one, of course the air traffic is limited. So that's what we advocate for.
Thank you so much. I love to go on from left to right. So I've got Ronald there. Do you agree with that? And I like your inputs that we need to reduce cost, we need to not regulate, over-regulate, and we need an infrastructure. Please continue, Mr. Ronoday.
Let me address that question first. Do we need to reduce cost and especially reduce taxes? The problem with Indian aviation is that it's got very weak air ticket prices, among the lowest in the world, I would say. And yet our taxes are amongst the highest in the world. So that combination of high taxes and low ticket prices is what gets us into trouble. The low ticket prices we can't do much about. It's probably a good thing for the consumer, but we really need the government to reduce taxes. Let me get to the broader issue though. How does India grow tourism? And as you started with, Jyoti, the fundamentals are all there. An ancient civilization, a large country, a biodiverse geography. Of course, all the fundamentals are there. And yet India suffers from a very, very low percentage of tourism. So what can we do about it? My firm belief in all situations is you want to achieve an objective, you need to have a strong plan. And the stronger the plan, the easier it will be to achieve the objective. Now, as in any good marketing plan, we need to do proper customer segmentation. We need to have products for each customer segment, and we need strong marketing communication aimed at the specific customer segment. As we all know, tourism is made up of very distinct segments of tourism. There is sun tourism, there is cultural tourism, there's adventure tourism, there is pilgrim tourism. India can aim for each one of these if we understand each one properly and again design products and communication around these. Just to give you a couple of thoughts, sun tourism is everyone's looking for sun and sand, and this is typically lower middle income groups coming out of Russia, out of Australia, out of countries like that. And we've done a great job with Goa, but the Andamans is just sitting there. It could be another big Hawaii. Kovalam is not properly leveraged. So sun tourism is one big opportunity where there are lots of volume. Pilgrim tourism. Buddhism is such an obvious one to go after. And then we can target nations like Korea and Vietnam and Japan and get pilgrim tourism for the Buddhist centers. There's adventure tourism. Adventure tourism is high-income people, typically out of Europe and US, but we need to develop the right adventures trails, if you will. Examples would be like the El Camino Trail, the Matterhorn Trail, the Appalachian Trail. We can develop those things in Leh and Sikkim and Kashmir and get adventure sports in. Cultural tourism is the most difficult one to crack. That's the one we've been living on, the Taj Mahal and the Jaipur palaces, etc. And that just requires fantastic infrastructure on safety, on diets, and on light entertainment. So I think we need to look at each one of these segments and develop good marketing plans. But I truly believe that the potential is immense. And as you know, it's a highly labor-intensive industry. We have the basics in terms of service mentality. So I think it's an opportunity just waiting to be leveraged.
Thank you. Great thoughts. I think, yes, we do need to change and we do need to reinvent ourselves and look at all opportunities beyond Goa and the regular circuit. Thanks for those interesting words. I'll move on to Suman, whom I can see again just below Mr. Datta. So Suman, can we have your inputs, please?
Yeah, thank you, Jyoti. From a tourism perspective, I think all of us know that the year that has just gone past has been the worst year in the history of tourism. According to the UNWTO, the international tourist arrivals are by 74%. Now, what this means in numbers is that there have been 1 billion less international tourist arrivals, which means that 1 trillion less in terms of export revenues. And in terms of jobs, there are direct job losses of anywhere between 100 to 120 million all across the world. And that is something that the governments are finding extremely difficult to cope with because the drop is too steep to look, as it were. Now, one of the things that we know is that the post-pandemic world is going to be very, very different from the pre-pandemic world. There are rapidly changing consumer preferences. People today are looking at more authentic, meaningful experiences, which means that there is going to be a hit to the high volume, low margin business that we understand as mass tourism. There are destinations today which are looking towards moving towards a more zero carbon footprint. They're talking about achieving zero food miles. And I think there is this larger discussion that we hear with many countries around the world where they're talking about factoring in environmental costs beyond the economic costs. So it's not just the money, but what is the impact on it. I know that several UN agencies now are looking at trying to budget their travel budgets using the currency of carbon emissions rather than a monetary currency. So the world is changing, and the governments are also channeling it in terms of in terms of their policies and how to take tourism to the next level. So to my mind, I think all of this churn and all of this flux is going to bring some good out of it, because I think after the pandemic, we are going to see a significant shift towards a more sustainable and a more responsible model. And I think that's going to pay off big time, not just for tourism, but also for aviation. Now, what this also does is that this shift means that it's almost as if the world is hitting the reset button for once. And what this gives is a big opportunity for several countries to up their game and then see as to how they can improve. So to my mind, I think that opens a big window of opportunity for India. And I think we just need to be alive to be able to take that.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suman. I think, yes, we're all looking at an opportunity and a learning experience as we go by, because I think we've learned a lot while moving forward in these months of lockdown and still struggling against it. Like Alexandra said, that yes, COVID is still here, but we need to look at opportunities and see how we can move forward and pave our path. So next to Suman, I see Mr. Pradeep ji. Pradeep ji, can we have with your vast experience in both the ministries? Love to hear that.
Okay, so thank you very much. Now, I would just like to rephrase the question. Instead of saying that India emerging as a hub of international tourism and all, I would say that we promote tourism not for the sake of tourism, because we promote tourism because it generates economic growth. So I'll try to answer the question saying that how do we ensure that aviation and tourism get together to bring back this economic growth? So we have had the inputs on where the focus has been on, we had the DG IATA speaking, my friend Suman Billa speaking on international tourism. Of course, very, very important points they have made. But what I would like to say is that past 1 year has taught us several lessons. We have learned our lessons and very important lessons. Well, the important, among them, the good lessons are, number one, that first and the foremost is that domestic travel is our strength. We are a big country. We are a big country, and today, if aviation has survived in the country, is because our domestic market is huge, and the same holds for tourism. Let's not forget our domestic tourism sector. Second thing we have learned is that air travel is no longer within India considered a luxury. Now, this is a big change. Now, air travel almost is becoming a sort of necessity. Now, this would change the tourism thing also, that all future tourism would be planned around air travel. Now, when this happens, number one, why this is happening is that people have realized something called value of travel time. Now, this value of travel time is definitely much more when you travel by air and you save time. And once this happens, you get people to spend more time at destinations. So this would be the changing face of tourism in India. And let's not forget 2-3 things is that Indian aviation has established its resilience in this COVID period. Now you can just imagine post-COVID how Indian aviation is bound to grow. And last but not the least, important lesson has been the responsible citizenry of the country. Now, when we opened up aviation, we saw we were really worried how to get back people, how to win their confidence. So a series of health protocols, procedures, and everything was brought into place. And it was the citizens who behaved extremely responsible. And we can say that today domestic travel is almost touching 75% of normal. That's pretty good going. And very soon we will be almost at pre-COVID levels. So what are the implications for tourism? Now, the first implication is that in the immediate future, long term, yes, of course, international tourism is important. In the immediate future, we have to focus on domestic tourism. Now, as I say, the country is opening up. Our situation is comparatively better. and people have not traveled for last 1 year. So I can see an explosive growth of tourism, of domestic tourism in the summer season, for which we have to grow. And if this happens, it's a golden opportunity, and this is what needs to be tapped so far as domestic tourism is concerned. About international tourism, I think we can go on length on discussing how India becomes a hub of tourism. We have the geographical advantage. Our airlines are picking up, they're gaining strength. And the future of airlines would be those airlines which have a huge domestic base. And in that way, we can see that we in India are blessed to have a huge domestic market, and soon our airlines will be moving out and capturing the global market. And the last thing is that the COVID has taught us many lessons, and one lesson of one important lesson is that this travel through hubs, people may not find it very, very attractive. So I mean, days would be coming when people will be interested in direct travel. So this is going to be a hint for our carriers and for international carriers to plan in such a way that one comes to India directly and one flies out of India directly. So these were my thought processes, and I'll be happy to react further.
Thank you, Pradeep ji. I think I love the last point. So that means the Indian carriers get more an opportunity to become strong. Yes, let's hope for the best. Ajay, right next to, I see you there. Can I have your comments, please? So, taking the cue from Mr. Kharola, You're on mute. Ajay, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, taking the cue from Mr. Kharola, I couldn't agree more. I think people will want to travel directly out of India. And the hub carriers are going to find it tougher. But for this to happen, it's important that Indian carriers become strong. It's important that Indian carriers start to fly directly to key locations around the world, and that exchange of traffic really happens in India. But to do this, we need to make Indian carriers stronger. And to that, Alexander's point and Rono's point, that of course we need to reduce cost. Of course we need to reduce taxation on aviation. I think most importantly, we need to change the mindset. As Mr. Kharola said, this is no longer something which is for the rich. Flying is not for the rich. It's for everybody. It's a necessity. So you can't tax it like you used to tax cigarettes or color televisions or whatever in the past. Right now we are paying what amounts to sin taxes for every ticket that we sell. If you really calculate the direct and indirect taxes, 50%, if I take 100 rupees on my ticket, 50 rupees goes to the government, various governments and statutory bodies, etc. So this is a situation which is not particularly conducive to making India a huge tourism hub. I think the second thing is that importantly, we need to work as one India. All the stakeholders need to work as one India. The government, the airlines, the state governments, all of you, the agents, travel agents, and so on. We need to work as one India. We go to different countries around the world, and we realize that when we go into a UAE or we go into Europe, the regulator, the government, the airline, all seems to be one team. And in our case, sometimes we are not one team. So we need to find ways to work together in the larger national and strategic interest. I think Alexander spoke of bubbles and how they should be temporary. I think what the bubbles has done is that it has provided for tourism, or it has provided for air travel between two countries without the ability of network carriers to take onward traffic. This, in a sense, and I know Alexander will not like this very much, but this, in a sense, is the correction of a historic wrong. I think the ASAs that we have negotiated in the past have given way too much leeway to foreign and network carriers. They've been able to pick up traffic from India, hub it in locations in the Gulf and in the Far East, and then transfer them around the world. An opportunity was never given to Indian carriers to do something similar, given all the burden of taxation, etc. So I think there's great potential in India. India must be, because of its locational and geographic, location, the foremost hub for exchange and for tourism. And let me just tell you quickly, we also need to be just simpler with our processes. We've seen this happen all the time. I was in Maldives in the winter, and it's so beautiful. It's so easy to go there. It's so easy to transfer from the airport to different resorts. We have similar islands in Lakshadweep and Andaman. There's no reason why we shouldn't have done what Maldives did. But for some reason we couldn't get our act together. I went to Gulmarg last weekend, and in Gulmarg, I mean, you said I go to Davos. Davos is a skiing destination. This Gulmarg is a far more beautiful skiing destination. I actually went to ski there, but just the basic infrastructure we need to fix. Just very basic infrastructure. And if you can fix that, and if you can fix the connectivity issues, you get to Srinagar, then driving to Gulmarg is a bit of a pain. The roads there are a little broken. The infrastructure, skiing infrastructure doesn't exist. So as Rono said, let's plan. Let's say, look, here are the huge strong points that we have. There's no reason why we can't get much more adventure tourism in Gulmarg, much more sun tourism beyond Dubai. Why can't we look at Lakshadweep and Andaman and make sure that the infrastructure is up to speed and the resorts are there and the connectivity is there. So I think lots to do, fantastic potential, but we must all act with simpler processes, less bureaucracy, and as one India. I think that's really important.
Yeah, thank you, Ajay. I think, yes, we do need one India. Infrastructure is something where we have been lacking, but this budget has shown us that our finance minister has given a huge budget for infrastructure, and let's hope we do achieve our goals. Now I'd like to come to George. George, please share your perspective, please.
Yeah, I would. There are many things that many of the predecessors have said where I would say, yes, I would completely resonate that. But a couple of things where I would say, okay, I have probably a different view on it. And Ajay-ji, you mentioned that the ASAs of the past have been made probably one-sided, not favoring probably the Indian carrier. I have a bit of a different perspective there. While I can't speak for ASAs, let's say, of certain other regions, I can probably speak of the ASA that Germany has had. And Germany has traditionally been a country that seeks partnership, and Germany, especially in the field of aviation, has always sought partnership and has been a partner of Indian aviation towards India, between government and government, be it in terms of funding, development, towards Air India, but also in terms of airline to airline. We were the ones who brought in Air India into Star Alliance. We really invested a lot in doing that. Why? Because Germany, from a cultural perspective, we believe in strong partnerships. That's what's partnerships at all levels, 360 degrees has made Germany into the kind of powerful economy that it actually is today. And we believe, that partnerships is the way forward. Protectionism often has a short and a mid-term effect. Yeah, I think which one may want to enjoy, but I think in the long run we cannot deny the fact that we are all interconnected in this world, right? I mean, naturally, this globe or humanity never made borders, right? Borders were made man-made, and while we try to govern within borders, which is absolutely legitimate in order to protect interests, I fully understand that. I think in a larger way, we as a humanity will remain interconnected, and probably that's the German philosophy also that I represent when I represent my airline brand, and coming to the point of hub carriers and interconnectivity, I think geographies like India, Europe, North America, they're so huge that it would technically be impossible to have point-to-point connections to every place where there are people actually who want to connect. So there will be a limitation to point-to-point traffic, or rather there has always been a limitation to point-to-point traffic, irrespective of the technological advances of aircraft and aircraft technology, where you will have to transit at some point. Either you have to transit domestically, let's say within India, within Europe, or within North Atlantic, or you can still transit, in a point somewhere in between. India could have been, or still can be, a point of transit between the West and the East. I mean, people wanting to come from Europe who want to go onwards to the East from Southeast Asia, or even all the way to New Zealand and Australia. India still has the potential to actually tap that business and tap that in, if it were to equip its airports for that and change its regulations in order to make that experience more seamless. So I feel that while point-to-point definitely is something that every carrier should look at, we cannot probably close our eyes to the fact that at some point of time, you will have to connect somewhere and you'll have to take a connecting flight, and with the current situation, for example, we were servicing Chennai. I was looking at somehow, how can we restart Pune again? We were looking at Hyderabad. Those are places that are currently in these bubble agreements not sufficiently connected. And once traffic restarts over there, I feel it needs these partnerships in order to make, let's say, the revival of our industry and come back again. I think these partnerships are very essential. And I therefore would like to really promote the spirit of partnership that we require in order to bring aviation, in order to bring tourism back to the forefront. And an airline can never be an end in itself. And I always compare an airline to building an express highway. Yeah, you do not build an express highway for the sake of driving on that express highway. There may be people who do that, that's there, of course. But I think the larger intention of building a highway is to connect places, to connect people, to connect cultures, to connect economies. And one should not estimate the impact, of keeping, or rather not reopening this international expressway in the air back in order to bring economic growth to all of us, because we are and we will remain an interconnected world.
Great. Thank you, George. Yes, we do need to get partnerships on board. We need to change, and of course, but we have to learn from the COVID and see how we can actually gain back on the opportunity we lost. I think we had lost that opportunity, and somehow we are going to get this opportunity back of becoming one of the largest hubs connecting the West and East. Saying that, I'm going to now get to the second round. So the National Civil Aviation Policy, the NCAP 2016, was designed for a market expected to be on a fast growth trajectory. The conditions today are very different. The NCAP needs to be reviewed in light of the operating environment post-COVID, especially as its impact is expected to be long-term, like a lot of you said that. So let me start here with Pradeep ji. And because you're talking about domestic and regional, Pradeep ji, I'd like to ask you that Mocha has been investing in UDAN and regional connectivity and opening more and more airports, I think more than 300. And first time actually interacting very effectively with the industry, all the stakeholders. How can we leverage this strength to establish a strong connection of tourism and aviation in cooperation with Ministry of Tourism, like we are doing today, and Ministry of Civil Aviation? I'd like to hear your inputs, of course, on the broader base.
Yeah. It's a difficult question. I'll attempt to answer. Well, I missed one point when I talked about the lessons learned. An important lesson which has been learned is that aviation is an ecosystem. When we talk of aviation, we talk of airlines, we talk of airports, we talk of MROs, we talk of ground handling, and we talk of the distribution system, the travel agents. Now, what we have learned is that if all of them work in unison, that's what brings in resilience in aviation sector. Now, this can be expanded. This can be expanded to add tourism. So we generate something called a tourism and aviation ecosystem. Now, it's very important to realize that in this ecosystem, each and every component has to perform in a very, very optimum or an efficient manner. So that has been the first learning. The second learning has been that the new normal, now what we call the new normal in aviation has evolved. The new normal in aviation is going to be a way which we have tested and tried for the last 1 year, that contactless travel, paperless travel. People will not be having boarding passes anymore. People, even the baggage tickets will be in electronic form, and it will be contactless airports. It will be digital scanning. People just walk in. We may not even have check-in counters. Now, this is all going to be a reality. So second is the new normal is going to happen. Number three, and let me say, you made a very valid point that regional connectivity, yes, newer areas will be opened up. I'll give a very simple example. Now, Northern Bihar, if you go, we just opened Darbhanga Airport during the pandemic. During the pandemic, North Bihar, Darbhanga Airport was opened. And today, if you want to book a flight, book a ticket to Darbhanga, you will not get a ticket, though there are sufficient number of flights. So this is showing that aviation is coming within the reach of a large number of people. When I say reach, there's two components. Number one is physical reach. When we add 100 more airports in the next 3 to 4 years, the expanse of aviation increases. The second connotation of reach is the economic reach. It is coming within the reach of common people. Now, these two reaches, accessibility to aviation has improved, and we are running a system in the country where air travel, in spite of all the taxes and all which my friends are saying, air travel continues to be maybe the cheapest in the world. Now all these are our strengths. We have to get together. This ecosystem has to come together. The tourism ecosystem, the packages and travel would be around destinations connected by air. So this is the new paradigm which is emerging, wherein the tourism and the aviation ecosystem will have to work together, will have to realign to the new normal, will have to realign to the new demands, would have to cater more to the domestic travelers.
Thank you, Pradeep ji. I think that those are very arresting thoughts, and we need to delve more and more into it. Yes, but I'll move to Rono. Rono, how do you think Indigo, which has the largest market share, be the magnanimous leader and carry all other Indian airlines with them? Because competition is certainly healthy and motivating as long as the goal is the same. So can I hear your comments on that, please?
Yes. So let me just start by applauding a couple of things the ministry has done over the years, which I think are very, very effective in opening up aviation and tourism. This Udan scheme, I think is a very, very good scheme because it de-risks the initial entry into a market. If it is Allahabad or Agra, we're not sure will it work, but if the government takes the initial risk and says, hey guys, for 2 years we'll subsidize this partly, it takes the risk away, and then we find to our surprise, hey, these are really good markets. So the Udan scheme I think is really great, and this opening up Air Force stations, this 100 new Air Force stations, I think the secretary was talking of Darbhanga is a perfect example. So converting Air Force stations also has been very good. So yes, those are good moves. To your question about how can Indigo and the industry as a whole move along. So, when we're talking of tourism, we have to realize how critical it is to provide clean, safe, reliable service. Because when people book flights, they're also booking hotels and cars and everything else. And if one piece breaks down, then they say like, oh, you ruined my whole trip. So this whole issue of safe, reliable, easy connectivity. You don't have to go back to Delhi to go from one city to another. You can go nonstop. So Indigo is doing all that. And I think with that comes a lot of people training, mentorship, leadership of how things should work. And I would say Air India initially was a great training ground for all of Indian aviation. Frankly, Air India engineers, I think, are among the best in the world. And thank God for that, because we have a great safety record. And all other airlines have benefited from that, or the ex-Air India staff, if you will. Well, Indigo is trying to be a pool of a similar nature. We will train people. We will give them sort of role models that they can be for others. But most of all, I think from the tourist point of view, we're just making sure that Indian aviation is safe, reliable, and easy to connect, and therefore grow tourism from.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think, yes, we do understand the dire viewpoint you've shared, and I think it's very interesting. Ajay, I'm going to come to you. Some international airlines in this country have been positioned as the national airlines. And I don't want, without naming anyone, how can we promote our own Indian airlines, and especially the low-cost carriers, to become the strength and to convert India to be the largest hub of Asia? I'd really like to hear that from you.
Okay, so I think this is, something that we've been speaking about for a very long time. I know the airline that you did not name, but I think it is that the first thing is that we need to make our own aviation players strong. And we can make our own aviation players strong by not taxing them as much as we do, not perhaps regulating them as much as we do, and simplifying process and procedures to enable Indian aviation players to grow. Because it's one thing to say, fine, let's stop all fifth and sixth freedom rights, let Indians fly everybody across the world, and of course we must do that, but you must have the ability to do that as well. It cannot be that you need to compete with hub carriers, but you have a completely different cost structure from the hub carriers because of the kind of regulation and taxation that is imposed upon you. So I think we need to simplify. We need to reduce cost. We need to make sure that George was mentioning about protectionism. This is not protectionism. This is just providing convenience to our own passengers to fly directly, and of course, where they cannot fly directly, they will fly through hubs. But let me just say that when people talk of protectionism, we operate in the cargo space, where we have seen this and much more protectionism in European markets. We go to the European markets, we go to the Southeast Asian markets. The amount of protectionism that you see over there, an Indian carrier just cannot get in. The whole system prevents us from getting in. So everybody, I think every country has the right to strategize for themselves, to strengthen themselves, to strengthen their own hubs, in India's case, to use its geographic advantage to be the exchange point between West and East. And remember that this increases tourism a hell of a lot, because when people come in and exchange flights from within India, they also stay sometimes and then they tour and travel around India. A model which has been so successfully done in the Gulf. So I think we need to look at the whole picture, and we need to strategize for ourselves as a country, and we need not be shy about creating strategy which benefits our country. We don't have to pander to and give in to voices from across the world that say that, oh, now you're becoming protectionist, you're setting up, you're creating walls, etc. We will create walls where we have to, and we will not create walls where we don't have to. But we must first work in the interest of our own country and in the interest of our own aviation and tourism sectors.
Thank you, Ajay. Very rightly said, actually, because I think it's a great perspective, because I think, yes, we are Indians. We do need to look into ourselves first and be the strength. Saying that, I'm going to move to Alexandre. So just to ask you, Alexandre, how can IATA help countries to achieve more milestones to support stronger hubs, especially India with a growing strong economy? And you've heard all the speakers speak. So regards the best implementation of One ID, Travel Pass, and so forth and so, which IATA is really investing in, especially after the COVID-19.
But we have several tools to do that. First of all, we are promoting, very up-to-date technologies to facilitate travel, to ease everything, to simplify processes. I will give you you have mentioned One ID. I will mention another one. We are developing, an IATA Travel Pass, which is a kind of certification tool for passengers and for government to be sure that you have been tested and vaccinated properly. So that's typically in line of COVID, and we think that it's a key tool to give government confidence that people who are entering into that territory, for whatever reason, do not re-import the COVID. So, and it's a simple tool, easy to use, which will be highly secured, not possible to hack, and easy to use by passengers. So typically, that's the support, the service IATA provide not only to airline but to government, to civil aviation. First of all, secondly, the second support we give, and some examples, some comparison, some benchmark, or some models that we provide to governments to say, hey, look outside and look at the successful other aviation markets. That's what they have done. And so we bring some materials for governments or for our members to have a more friendly, more dynamic, more supportive environment. I think that's something we can bring as well. I can tell you, when I travel everywhere, I am usually questioned by the minister or the prime minister that is very nice to receive me. And the first question he asks is, how do you position my country in your map of competitiveness for aviation? And frankly, what we give, the results we give, because we have a benchmark for that, is absolutely key to motivate the authority to do the right job. So reduce costs, develop infrastructure, deregulate, or having the best environment for aviation. That's what we bring.
Thank you so much. I would love to add an add-on question later to that. That is it only the countries and the aviation industry as airlines, or do you also do that for the agents? But not asking you right now. I'm going to move on to George. George, with your vast international expertise of one of the largest group, of Lufthansa, what do you think is the scope of bringing in both the Indian and the international experience? And how had Germany and Europe become an important hub? And what do you think we were missing in all this time? Can you hear me? Hello?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah. No, I just wanted to quote a couple of statistics which kind of signify a little bit of Germany. Germany is known as the world champion of vacation travel, and 2019 was one of the heights of vacation travel, for Germans. So out of a population of 85 million Germans, 55 of them went on a vacation travel. They created 70 million trips and spent 74 billion euros worth on their respective trips. So I think there's a culture there in Germany to travel, to explore the world, to see the world. And that's, of course, something, the fact that Germans like to travel, that makes Germany, of course, a strong hub, comparing now this to India, from the beginning of the 90s, travel started happening, people started migrating. And once they migrated, Indians all over the world have become ambassadors of everything Indian, be it business, be it outsourcing to India, be it make in India, be it health, be it culture, be it Ayurveda, be it spirituality, and many other things as well, and I think India as a nation has this sheer strength, because it wants to be connected to the world, to actually provide the prerequisites to be a strong hub in all these areas, be it aviation, be it tourism. Or to put it point blank, India has the ability to be a hub for anything that it puts its mind to, And I think it's only a matter of priority. So if a government decides, okay, that tourism, aviation is one of its priorities, then India can make that happen. I'm just trying to compare it also to the IT sector in India, or even the startup sector in India. You have bodies like NASSCOM, you have the startup scene. I don't want to mention names over here, where a startup is being promoted, and India has its number of unicorns to its name. So we see in India many examples when there is a prioritization where the public and the private side come together and say, hey, this is now not for the mid, but for the long term, an important sector for us. Then India will reach the heights and will reach, will excel above all the others, And, I think it's important to take trends that come, that we can already see, and pick them up, and I try to get into that. And Sumanji mentioned something at the beginning. There is this strong need for humans to venture into sustainable travel, to be responsible as citizens, responsible citizenship. And, I was thinking many times, and Ajayji, we have been in the World Economic Forum in a platform where we talked about sustainable aviation fuel, and we were talking about lowering cost structures. I mean, one important cost that all airlines face is fuel. So it's your fuel, it's your pilot cost, and, your asset costs that are there. Why can India not see this trend that is there, that the world will want to become more and more sustainable, to become actually a hub of production of sustainable aviation fuel? For example, that would be a trend where nobody is really the expert right now, where nobody is really got the upper hand, and become a leader in that particular segment and draw the entire world towards it in that particular expertise that so much affects aviation. So I think picking up on trends early, looking and doing a lot of foreseeing, I think that's what could bring India into a leading position, be it in the field of aviation and tourism. I don't know if that thought kind of answered your question.
Yeah, I did, of course. Thank you. I think it's very intriguing the way you said it and the way you put it across in a very different way. But before I come to Suman, I'm going to ask Pradeep ji because he has to be somewhere else, but I need to ask him one question because I think it's very important. Suman, if you don't mind, I'll just like to ask Pradeep a question. Do we need a stronger regulator, Pradeep ji, or should we be giving more strength and to DGCA for creating this hub and making it seamless? And how do you think it can be more effective and profitable for the travel agent community? And what would we really be needing more interaction with the industry from the perspective of travel agents? And I actually wanted you to share something about this.
I think you asked me two questions. I mean, I don't
one question.
While asking more questions, I'm reminded of my school days in the classroom, and I was not able to answer questions to the class teacher. She will ask me even more questions.
I would love the government to commit.
Okay, so you have said that your first part of the question is that do we want a stronger regulator? I would say we want an efficient regulator. The regulation has to be extremely efficient and it has to be non-intrusive, but at the same time, it should ensure that the ease of doing business is maintained at its best. No compromises on safety, but on the procedure side, we should make it totally non-intrusive. And let me say that we have made a big development on this is the entire DGCA has been put on electronic system and all access to DGCA henceforth will be electronically. There will be no paperwork. That's one part of it. Second, you said is the role of travel agents. Now, let me say over here, travel agents have performed a very important role. But, change is the essence of life. Things are changing. They're still thinking of old GDS systems and old systems of reservations and brick and mortar travel agents. Things have to change. We are talking of contactless travel. When we talk of contactless travel, even the ticketing also has to move along with that. So it has to be more electronic. It has to be more faceless. It has to be more convenient. The travel agents will survive by giving more services and more value additions. Otherwise, if the travel agents, now here I see is there is a big scope when the travel agents, combine within themselves the role of a travel agent as well as a tour operator. So that's what has to be a big change. Mere travel agents for booking of tickets, I think their share will go on getting less and less. As electronic ticketing becomes more popular, maybe I can book a ticket sitting on my mobile. So the things are changing, but at the same time, if I want to plan a travel, I want to plan a package, and that's where the travel agents and the tour operators will have to perform. So these are my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Pradeep ji, for saying that. But yes, I can see that you've gone digital and you've got electronic, and the COVID has taught us to move that quicker. But today, I don't think any travel agent cannot be compared to an online travel agent, because we're all dealing online with our people. And yes, we do need to add on services, and hopefully we will. Suman, coming back to you, tourism and aviation, I always feel are like a railway track, running parallel but joined by a cross tie. Can they become the last minute connect and run like a monorail, much swifter and a driver of the hub? I would like your perspective from India and of course the UFW, how impact of taxes and much more other things. But of course,
so I think there can be no tourism without aviation and vice versa. And, if there is any other sector which has been as badly affected as tourism, it's the aviation. And I think there is no time other than the present where we need both the tourism and the aviation sector to be able to work together. So today, I just want to circle back to what Mr. Kharola spoke about, the domestic demand. I think that is going to be the mainstay for India. So if you look at domestic demand, most of the travel that's happening today is largely people are driving into holidays, you know, in their own cars. But if we have to move to the next level and achieve a critical mass, we need to be able to get people to different destinations within a safe and controlled environment. That means that we will have to rely on the aviation sector. So essentially, I think what we need to do is to get the tourism and the aviation sectors to sit together and work on two elements. The first is to map demand. Where is demand going? And you know, it's a, if aviation also has to step beyond the necessary travel and go into the leisure space, we will need to sit down with the tourism sector to see as to where it is going and work together. The second element of that, which is very important, is how do we bundle together the cost? Because from what we see, we think that destinations which have a strong synergy with aviation are the ones which are going to be able to bounce back strongly. And we think that the Middle Eastern destinations have a big advantage because they will be able to bundle together the cost of the airfare, the cost of the accommodation, and perhaps the cost of visits to the sites, etc., so that they're able to make it predictable for the traveler. As a consumer, I may be able to get a great deal on my hotel, but if I'm not sure about what is the rate that I'm going to get on my airline ticket, that is still going to be a little bit of a dampener. So I think today we need to get both of our tourism industry and the aviation industry to sit together and see as to how we can bundle the cost and be able to make that you know, product offering to the wider world, and that is something that's going to even work well for the domestic market.
Yeah, thank you, Suman. Actually, yes, we do need to sit together, and we need to sit beyond just sitting together and formulate and I think implement that, because I think we really don't want to miss the bus again for leveraging the tourism and aviation. Coming back on my next set of questions, you know, I know we are running short of time because I've been hearing you speak, and you know, it's been so coming from the heart from every speaker that I like to just extend my regrets that I would like it to be extended by another 15 minutes if it's all right with all of you here, because I think the industries very rarely get an opportunity to hear such a galaxy of stars act. And I would like them to absorb what they are really hearing. So if it's okay with all of you, I would like to start the second set of questions. It'll take just another 10 minutes, I'm sure, with all of us. Is that okay with everyone? So that, you know, I wouldn't want anyone going in between, please. Thank you. So to take that now, I think I'll take the second set of questions then. Ajay, what do you think as a private stakeholder, like a public-private partnership model to be based on? How do you think the entire industry needs to be protected? The airline, the agent, the consumer, to work together to successfully establish the hub and make it sustainable. You know, you are known. I know that you've turned around DTC, you've turned around Doordarshan. So what can the agents do to make it a very healthy industry and be partners to the thing to create this hub and with the airlines?
I think it's exactly what Mr. Kharola just said. You know, you need to. I think you need to add value to airlines, and airlines need to add value to you. And I think there's just so much you guys can do. I think there is no limit to what you can do. You can do so much of what airlines by themselves cannot really do. And that is personal connect with so many communities, trying to figure out exactly what they need, trying to give that feedback to airlines, trying to design, as Suman was saying, joint sort of products where you know, the hotels and the airlines, you guys can actually be the bridge between hotels and airlines. I saw some of this in Maldives this year, where you know, essentially when a hotel room is sold, the airfare is sold along with that hotel room. So in actual fact, when I went deeper into it, I saw that hotels were actually paying to these seaplane operators $350 to $400 for a 15 or 20-minute ride from the airport to that resort. And they can do that because a guy who comes to stay in those hotels pays you know, maybe $1,000 or $1,500 for a room night to be in that hotel. So that $350 is a small portion of if somebody's staying there for 3 or 4 nights. So we need to do more of those packages today. Just as a comparison, I mean, there they were getting $350 for a 15-20-minute ride, and here we get $50 for going from Delhi to Bombay as an airline. So you know, it's different. I think you guys can get much more value to airlines by bundling us bundle things together, by helping us create unique experiences, and by reaching out to communities that we cannot by ourselves reach out to. So I think a great role for agents to play, and we must play this, meet much more often and play this role together.
Yes, I think that's very important. And I think we as associations also should be more in interaction with all of you. Not that we are not, especially in a country like ours, where I know we are very working very closely with you all, but I would like to take this opportunity to say that we want to take it to the next level. Alexandra, I'm going to ask you one thing, that IATA since 1945 has supported the development of the commercial standards upon which the global air transport industry is built. Does it need to change its standards and also become the voice of the consumer, the agent fraternity? As at the end of the day, like I've been saying, and as asked Ajay also the same thing, all stakeholders would be needed to establish a hub and build a healthier environment.
We have been developing the standards, and even we have modernized the standards. We have changed the standards. If you remember, in the 60s and 70s, we were issuing paper tickets, and we were even regulating the prices. If you remember that old times. Now we have.
But you were also giving us commissions at that time. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. and now we have moved to the e-tickets, and we are operating the BSP. Well, first of all, this innovation of this e-innovation in our business has been absolutely key. There is no other transportation mode that is governed by e-ticket. If I remind you of us, we are the only industry to do that. Secondly, the BSP. I know that there are some criticism on that, but it is a system that is very well designed and tailored for all needs: the needs of agents, the needs of airlines, and it guarantees that the financials is working pretty solidly. And I tell you that because we had a very difficult time and we still have difficult time during the COVID crisis. You might imagine how tense the system was because everybody was short of cash, to be short. So we think that our role is to continue to upgrade, to develop, and to integrate all the requests and concerns of all the stakeholders in the system in the most efficient and effective, probably digital system for the industry and for the passenger. That's the way it has to be built. I think we play a role. We welcome any concern, modification, criticism, and we try to do our best. And frankly, it has worked quite well, I can tell you, under an extreme difficult situation and tension. So we will continue to regulate that. We think that the institutions that are working to regulate commercially the system are working pretty well, taking into account the various interests of all the stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. Very thought-provoking, but I hope this talk of ours will continue to make agents as stronger stakeholders as other stakeholders too with you, so that we can move forward with a more better and a positive perspective. Rona, what do you think will be required for airlines, and especially the low-cost airlines, to promote tourism, and help the country and other stakeholders of the value chain? Would LCC model be more effective even for a long haul than a full service carrier moving ahead for the future?
Well, I think it has been proven practically all over the world that the low-cost model works for about a range of 6-7 hours. Beyond that, whether it's Norwegian or AirAsia X, the low-cost model really hasn't worked for long haul, and we don't see that changing. But remember, within 7 hours flying, there's so much destinations from Russia to Africa to Southeast Asia that's within our purview, if you will, that I think we have lots of room for growth. So Indigo is going to do its best to bring in people from all of those countries into India. And, talking about this whole issue of ecosystem that Mr. Kharola mentioned, we need the whole system to work. And, just look at the terminals, the way they are sort of designed in Mumbai and Delhi, really quite customer unfriendly, I would say. come into Terminal 2, then find your way to Terminal 1 on your own, take a taxi at the middle of the night. I mean, this is not customer friendly at all. So everyone needs to do their piece, airlines, travel agents. And I think the theme really is that the world is moving towards, not towards goods, but towards experiences. The new generation in particular doesn't want to buy more stuff. They want more experiences. And I think that's where travel agents come in. You're selling not airline tickets, you're selling an experience.
Absolutely.
So that's what your role should be, I think.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Tourism is all about experiences. And that's the reason it's never going to die down. Even after COVID-19, I think we are going to survive and people are going to start exploring again. So when taking that cue, what do you feel the ministry and the stakeholders of tourism should be investing in to see that the aviation doesn't struggle to survive? And can we bring professionalism into the implementation and improvise on policies as one visa, one insurance, e-visa, and of course the correct protocols to be brought in? And do you think the ministries should also be working under one national task force, what we've been asking since the time of the COVID lockdown, under the aegis of the Honorable Prime Minister himself, to see that this industry flourishes?
I think the most important thing that we need to do, Jyoti, is to have harmonized health protocols all across the country. If we have to get people to travel, you would need to make travel predictable for them. So I think the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Tourism, and the Ministry of Aviation should sit together and develop these, consult the states and develop these harmonized health protocols. Because today, every state has, their own set of health protocols. And even within the state, there are some districts which have, their special elements which are put into it. That is not to take away the power of the states or the districts to work on in the interest of public health. But I think we need to have a common approach whereby it will make it, if I'm a traveler going from Delhi to Trivandrum, I should know, what to expect at the end of it. And I think as a general case, we should make travel predictable. So I think that's the number one thing that we need to do to enable domestic travel and be able to ramp it up quickly. Secondly, I think even for the global, at the global level, the biggest challenge that we see to international travel is that most of the governments are acting in uncoordinated manner. At the end of the day, most of us have common concerns, and if we are able to coordinate our approach, then it would add to so much more synergy amongst us. We may not be able to get the whole world behind us, but I think at least those which are important source markets or important aviation hubs from India, I think we need to be able to work with them to see as to how we need to, we can create a more predictable system. The third is, you mentioned about insurance, and there are, the only perhaps the strong example we have is of Portugal. When they reopened last year, they have said that any international tourist who comes will be covered by health insurance, which means that if you go there and you catch the disease, you will be treated at, by your insurance cost. Now we will need to figure out how we are going to be able to, find the money to do the cost, or how we are able to innovatively be able to build it within the cost that we are going to realize from the customer. But I think the most important development that we need to keep our eyes open for and see as to how to hit it is going to be the vaccine passport. Because of course, at this point of time, there are two elements we don't know: whether those who are vaccinated can be asymptomatic carriers, and we also do not know as to how long the effectiveness of the vaccine will last. But I think once we have this, we all have a fairly reasonably good idea that it's going to be a digital, electronically verifiable vaccine passport. And I think if we get onto that bandwagon faster, we will be able to make that switch with so much less effort.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a very well-informed thought, actually, because we do need to look into the entire way we are going to be traveling and how we are going to be traveling. Like Alexandre said right in the beginning, that, these harmonization and coordination synergies are something which we would be requiring at micro and macro level, so it's going to be really very important, I think. George, do you think, from your experience as a foreign airline in India, do you think you would require a regulatory body stronger than to your exposure, because you have exposure to both the markets? And do you think there is ease of business when you fly into India? And do you think the policies that are created for the hub would benefit you? Because I did hear you say that, we need to play that role. So, and would you be playing a better role with the travel agents, or do you think you also would like to go directly towards the NDC way or the online way? I'd just like to hear a quick response on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that NDC technology and being close to travel agents should be mutually exclusive. I think they should go hand in hand. I think we've heard from most of the speakers that technology is the way forward. You know, digitalization is the way forward. Talking about something as new as perhaps even the vaccination passport. You know, the minute things are digitalized, they become efficient, and even Mr. Karola also very clearly said he wants a more efficient regulatory body. He doesn't want even stronger regulatory body. So I think transparency is created through technology, and technology, if it's creates seamlessness also in the travel experience. And this is what we need to achieve. And therefore, I think travel agents and Jyoti, the whole spectrum of travel agents, the ones that are, have an affinity towards technology, those are the ones with which everybody is able to work closely, because that's the future, and I think the wake-up call has been heard in India. I think perhaps 3, 4, 5 years ago, when NDC and related topics came up first, I think it hit as a bit of a shock to the travel agent community. Where I think India has woken up to the wake-up call, and I think all those travel agents that get onto the technological bandwagon, for them working closely together is absolutely not mutually exclusive to all the new technology that they're going to be facing. Yeah, so
great. That's exceptional view. And I think, yes, I believe strongly, I'm a travel agent, so I strongly believe that our travel agents and our members are here to stay. They are not going anywhere. They'll only become the strong connect and the value connect to all the entire aviation industry. So now, just before I wind up, I'm going to quickly ask you one-word answers for some rapid question line. I just want one word answers or a one-line answer before we close down. Can I start with Suman? I see you on the screen. Suman, what is your desire to achieve?
Happiness.
We need to have fun too.
Happiness.
What would you desire to achieve? One word, one line, that's all.
No, I think happiness and peace.
Okay, that's great. Skilling, I'm asking you only, just 3 quick questions. Skilling, what would you think about?
To be able to do things with least effort to maximum impact.
Wow. Pragmatism.
I think to be able to have greater acceptance of things as they are and work around them.
Very interesting. Alexandria, can I hear a quick one-word answer or a one-line answer from you on these 3 quick points? IATA commissions and remuneration.
IATA commission and remuneration. So that we as you know, we do not take a lot of commission because we are operating in costs, in recovery cost. So we just cover our costs, so we don't make any profit on our systems. First of all, and for travel agents, it's basically a negotiation between airlines and travel agents, and we do not intervene in that.
Okay, wow.
But what we think is that the more we protect the interest of everybody and we guarantee that the system works, the better it is for everyone. Okay, and we are there to guarantee that.
Okay, thank you. One word on NDC? Just one word. Observation.
About NDC, that's an opportunity, formidable opportunity for agents to have a direct contact with airlines. And it's a formidable opportunity for airlines to give the agents the detail of our offers, the content of our offers, so they can address the passenger and the customer better by providing them the whole information and the whole service and the whole product in which we have heavily invested. So adopt NDC.
Okay, I'm going to reemphasize.
Good for everyone.
Thank you. I'm going to re-emphasize the last point, future of travel agents. Your one-word answer.
Viewed from me, future of travel agents, but they are essential partners for us. And there is a big segment, a big market segment and number of customers that need travel agents to build their travel. And not only for tourism, but also for professional travel.
Okay.
So they will exist besides direct sales.
Lovely.
For sure.
I'm
And
enjoying
NDC
hearing that.
will contribute to strengthen the existence of travel agent.
Thank you. That's a wonderful thought. Rono, milestone in mind?
Milestone in mind. Opening up of international back to where it was.
Wow, yes, we're all looking forward to it. If you were the aviation minister, one thing that you would do?
One thing that I would do, reduce taxes on airlines.
Great, you're my best friend. Learnings from COVID-19.
Learn to be agile and nimble and sort of live with the reality of the situation.
Okay, yes, we need to accept life as it comes. Ajay, opportunity for growth. He's not there, is he? He's moved on, is it? Okay, I can't see him. Okay, we'll come to George. George, biggest learning from COVID-19?
Remain patient.
Yes, that's patience can overcome mountains. Agents for you as Lufthansa?
Increasingly more relevant in an increasingly complex world that we're getting into post-COVID.
Okay, wonderful. Consolidation or free for all?
Balanced, no extreme in either direction.
Okay, great. So it's been lovely. I have so many questions here in my chat box, but I know we are running out of time. I would like to ask if anyone would like to answer one or two questions, or are we running very, very late? I would love to take a viewpoint from you because yes, I have a box full with my WhatsApp full too, because I think they were very excited to hear all of you. Alexandre, do you have time to take one question?
I have time to take one question, but the last one, because I am a bit short now.
Okay. George and Suman, are you okay with one question each from our members? Suman, are you okay?
Okay, quick question.
Okay, so I'll quickly ask the questions which I'm getting from the viewers. So I'll ask Alexandre, the first question is, I have our Vice President Jay Bhatia asking this, that India is moving towards being a hub of aviation in Asia. The number of airlines and the operations will be multifold. The financial security of customers and travel trade from the airlines operating from and into India with bankruptcy and delay in refunds must be taken up. Do you think this is the right time to start an insurance fee on the tickets? Alexandre, that's for you.
An insurance fee on the tickets? You mean an insurance fee on the tickets to protect from what? From the additional cost coming from COVID or what?
No, they're talking about defaults. I think they're talking more from the point of defaults on both sides.
Okay. But you know, we have, nobody knows that, but or very few people know that there is already significant insurance on tickets when you pay with a credit card. A lot of credit card networks, they insure you about, you know, the refund of tickets and all that stuff. So it happens. Should we add additional cost? I'm not sure that it would be really necessary for that.
Okay, but not everyone is going through credit cards, because in our country, people are not, airlines are still not accepting it. So
no, that's true. I recognize that it's a more European approach. So that's absolutely true. You know, the point there is it's a difficult negotiation with insurance. It will be a difficult negotiation on cost between airlines, travel agent, and insurance. So, well, perhaps it will work. Well, I warn you, be careful about the insurance costs.
Okay, thank you. Suman, this is the next one for you from again management committee members of ours, that you've been at the helm of UNWTO as well as with MOT. Connecting with developed countries around the world, do you think presently the Indian government is also working on similar professional and action-based standards? And what would be your suggestion to the government so as to ensure India becomes the hub? I mean, we already discussed this, but if you could just reiterate what in that format.
Sure. As I've said, I think there is a big opportunity ahead of India because of the pandemic. And one of the things that we need to realize is that India's heft in international space has grown considerably in the past few years, and that has multiple impact in terms of the benefits it can derive to the country because of greater visibility, because of greater world standing. So I think it makes that's very good capital to work on. So as we emerge out of this pandemic, and I think that is when the government really needs to step in, because wherever we see all across the world, governments are really helpless because they are only going to be able to come out and put money on the table when they see light at the end of the tunnel. So it's important for us to understand that as and when we see that, we should be able to hit the ground running and see as to how we can support our industry, how we can expand our networks, and how we can expand our ecosystems to be able to face up to that. We also need to think about how we can re-strategize ourselves, re-envision ourselves so that we have a strong product offering as well. So I think from all sets, there is no doubt that there is tremendous amount of pain, on both sides. But I am optimistic that I think we will see the end of it. And I think governments which are resolute, which are proactive, which have a nimble approach. But I think most importantly, the key word is going to be governments that take a entrepreneurial position are the ones which will come out of it stronger. And I'm very hopeful, and I think that the government of India will certainly come around to that position.
That's that's the best positive note that we could end on. So I will just say that this lockdown period of nearly 1 year, we have witnessed innumerable webinars, discussions, presentations, but I think this has truly been a very interesting discussion, and a discussion which has got us to hear, absorb, and already ready to plan. And we certainly need to drive this together and achieve our collective futuristic vision. And with this powered August bodies, starting with the minister himself, and which we are going to end with now, I, as the President TiE and Vice Chairperson of FAITH, on behalf of ITM, thank each one of you for sparing your time and reinforce that we definitely need to reinvent, reboot, and restructure in cooperation and collaboration. Let us together begin this journey today, and it begins now.